In video 20 and 21, we talked about pre-reading activities, one related to the teacher's experience, one related to the language in the reading passage. And in both of those, I also discussed some ways to do reading instead of pre-reading. And in my experience, teachers spend maybe 5 minutes on pre-reading activities related to experiences to warm students up, so to speak. 5 minutes on language, and then 5 minutes of reading, often it's oral reading, and then 5 minutes of post-reading activities, which we're going to discuss in this video. But anyway, in the foreword to my book, I say two very important things which I'd like you to write down now. Number one, question, and then you put in the next word. Question, James?
Everything.
Everything.
Everything is okay? You got that. Next one, number two, believe. Three more words.
Nothing I say. Believe nothing I say.
Yeah. So I make quite a few claims in all of the videos and in my readings, and I don't expect you to agree with them. I hope you question them. But I do hope you try the alternatives and compare the results of what you're doing now with the alternative. And don't just try the alternative once, you have to try it 2 or 3 times, because it takes you a few times to get used to it, and it takes a few times for the students to get used to it. So when you make a cake, the first time you make it, it comes out a certain way, then you adjust a little bit, then you adjust a little bit more, and maybe the 4th time it comes out the way it's supposed to come out. So it's the same with trying these alternatives. And just try them for a few minutes a day and compare. It's very important to compare the results of what you did before with what you're doing now. So skepticism is my middle name, and I want you to be skeptics also, but I want you to continue to experiment and try these things. Anyway, one of the things that people do after people read is they check the vocabulary. So why don't you put down which of these 3 is the correct answer? The meaning of trip. Well, I mean, it's a ridiculous question. Because if you don't have the context, all 3 are correct. If you look up trip in the dictionary, these are 3 of the meanings that you get. So, if you have a trip, then you know it's be, because it's a noun. But people don't use articles. We're going to discuss that in another video, the problem with no articles. So it's in the title, A Short Trip in 1800. So you know it's a noun because you've got an article before it. So you can read the passage silently, and then we're going to have a test. So what are a couple of problems with these kinds of questions that we ask after a reading passage? Could you write down one problem each? You know, you ask the students read this thing orally in most cases, then the teacher asks these kinds of questions. So what's a potential disadvantage or a real disadvantage of these kinds of questions?
I think one potential disadvantage is like students may not necessarily understand the vocabulary, but they could still answer the question because they remember the sequence of events.
Mm-hmm.
Another disadvantage would be the questions being asked are in sequence at the story, of the same sequence as the story, so that it's using memory, possibly of words they don't know.
These questions are not open-ended because it's more descriptive, what, you know, what and where, but the teacher's making it kind of like, again, with the order. He's kind of setting it up, making it like an open-ended question, like yes, no, just one word answers, you know.
So they focus on memory. I think you hinted at that, rather than using language, remembering. And you can remember a few of the words and still not understand the whole sentence. When I asked you to read, James, the sentence before, and you looked at it and then you looked at me to say it, you changed it a little bit, and then I understood that you understood it because you changed it a little bit. So having them to rethink right will tell you more about their comprehension, especially if they use gestures as they're doing it, than these kinds of questions, I think. But again, don't believe it. Here's another thing that people do after. So, can you read the first one?
How many men dismounted from their horses?
Uh-huh. And?
Who arrived at the fisherman's house?
Mm-hmm. And what are the students supposed to do?
Match the question with the answer.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the problem with that?
There's no new information. It's pretty much, because the first question asks how many men dismounted from their horses, who arrived at the fisherman's house. The 3 men.
I mean, these are just a couple of many, but the point is that there's no use of language on the part of the student. No use of language. So I think it's important to constantly use language. Speaking, listening, writing, and reading. And here, all they have to do is click something off and put an A and B, you see? So it's the same with the multiple choice standardized tests. They don't have to do anything, they have to recognize something and depend on their memory to get the answer right. 15 seconds. 15 seconds it took to just do one. You got to read a lot to get it, and when you get it, what do you have? Just the word equivalent. Again, no use of language. So it takes, if you take 15 seconds for each one, how many are there?
5.
5.
What is that? More than a minute? More than a minute?
Yeah.
What do people learn? To memorize and get the right answer. No use of language, no exploration of meaning. Same issue. It's a little different because they have to produce something, right? You give them a couple of words and they have to write the sentence. So this is stronger than all of the previous ones, the matching, the fill-ins, but it's much better. They have to do more. Please write 2 questions about the first sentence. Ewan, ask your question, but don't look at the paper.
How many men dismounted from the horses?
Yours, James?
What did the fisherman's son give to the horses?
Mm-hmm. Now, after Ewan says it, everyone should write it. So say it again.
How many men dismounted from the horses?
So he asked the question, everybody in the class writes it, and usually people ask different questions. So at the end of 5 minutes, they've got maybe 6 or 7 questions. So forget the questions in the textbook. Forget you asking as a teacher the questions. Have the students produce the questions. Every student who says one, the others all write, and then they write the answers. Atsuko, what's your question?
When did the 3 men dismount their horses?
Okay, now you see, when did the 3 men dismount their horses? Then we look again, and we have to say that it's dismount from. But from, dismount is a very unusual word, very uncommon. But again, if you know the meaning of dismount, and you look it up in the dictionary, it doesn't help, because it's not dismount, it's dismounted from. See? So then the student learns that you have certain words that go together, dismounted. So the fact that the person leaves the word out is good news, because it knows, you know what you have to work on. And then the student looks at the passage again and says, ah! And then they put a little thing in their book and say from, dismounted from. They add it. That's ideal. That's what learning is. Approximating, you write a draft, you revise it, and then you have a final draft, the right version. And then the students can see their progress all the time, I think. Now, could you write this? Have you ever ridden a horse? Do you like horses? Draw a sketch of a dangerous situation you've been in. A dangerous situation. James, I know you're not finished, and you and Oscar aren't finished, but say something about your dangerous situation that you sketched.
Say something about it without telling it, or, okay.
Say something about it, yeah.
It involves, it involves surfing, and I was riding my board. I was trying to clear a wave, and something from the side came to me.
So, again, personal experience, but they can start with a sketch and then translate it into words. And some of the words they'll say will be incorrect, but if they record it, transcribe it, again, it's their experience related to a word, and they'll remember that word more than if we just do it from the reading passage.
Okay.
The point of this is not to encourage the students to do speed reading, which I think is a misguided activity that we have students do. Look, people spend hours writing things to get the writing clear and careful, and then we do speed reading. I mean, you should relish every sentence. You should enjoy each sentence. What's the point of speed reading? You speed read and you miss all the function words, you just get a few so-called keywords, and you miss most of the points. And you don't enjoy reading. To me, reading is like eating fast. I mean, you can sit down in a meal, you can eat it in 5 minutes or 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes, I don't think you enjoy it as much. You just stuff your mouth and get it into your stomach. So if you want to taste the food, you take your time. If you want to taste the message that the author has spent a lot of time to produce, why don't you enjoy it? Relish the language. Then reading becomes worthwhile. The reason I think it's important for them to write down the amount of time it takes is that they see that when they read something over and over, more of the language moves from the page into their head, so they automatically can relish the same amount of language in a little less time, so they can see some progress. Now, erase everything there. In the second reading, I had 2 sense groups. You see, I mean 1 sense group. So they see that, oh gee, the first time I had to pause and then think of 2 parts of the sentence. The second time, the same thing. So when the 3 fishermen, when the 3, who came to the village?
What? People on horses, brothers?
All right, the 3,
Oh, 3 men.
the
Yeah.
3 men. So the first time they write the 3 men. Dismounted from their horses as soon as they arrived. And the next time the 3 men dismounted from their horses, so it's 1 sense group instead of 2. So they see, oh my goodness, every time. And then also, next, right, in the first reading, I omitted, O-M-I-T-T-E-D, I omitted words. In the second reading, I omitted words. In the first reading, I changed words or phrases So you see we got 2 blank lines there. One is for words and one is for phrases. That's very important to distinguish. So when the 3 visitors arrived, instead of the 3 men, that's a word change. They dismounted their horses, omitted, 1 word omitted. Next time, no word omitted. So it's very important for them to see their progress in the amount of time, the size of the sense groups, the number of words they'll omit, and the number of words they change, because these are the purposes of read, think, speak, listen, write, whatever. So students, again, can be in control of their own learning and can see their progress. They don't need a reading test. So you can do all these things without the tests, and the students can assess themselves. People talk about student-centered learning, student-centered assessment. No judgment, and everybody is at their own pace. It doesn't matter how many they fill in or they don't fill in. Not a problem. they can maybe start to enjoy reading instead of thinking of reading as some kind of, what shall I say, what do some people think about, it's torture for some people. So thank you very much.